Okay, great. All right, welcome everyone. This is the December 8th meeting of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for Measures B, J, and Y for Oakland Unified School District. Okay, we do have a pretty packed agenda, so we will get started. Just a reminder, members of the public are invited to comment on agenda items. There are speaker request cards available near the entrance, and I do believe there is a process for commenting online. Okay. Mr. Hollis, can you please run a roll call to establish quorum?
Yes, Chair. On the roll call, for the Measures B, J, and Y Independent Citizen School Facilities Bond Oversight Committee meeting for December 8th, 2025. Member Nelson?
Here.
Member Jones III?
Present.
Member Dawson?
Here.
Member Clark is absent. Secretary Gonzalez?
Here.
And Chair Butler?
Here.
Quorum present.
Excellent. Okay, moving right along. So our first set of items today or this evening are the election of committee officers. Okay, so item C.-1 is nomination of a chairperson. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I will nominate Viola Gonzalez.
One quick second. Is there a point of order?
And I was just about to make a notion to make sure to have one mic on at a time. That's
Not bad.
Okay, Member Nelson.
I'd like to nominate Viola Gonzalez for chair.
Second that. Okay, so now, are there any other nominations for chairperson? Nope. Okay, seeing none. Moving on to item C.-2.
If I may, Chair. Before we move from the item, there's a couple of things. So the nominations are closed, and I'd like to ask Member Gonzalez or Ms. Viola Gonzalez if they would like to give a 2-minute speech on chairperson.
Very briefly, I'm honored to be nominated. I would work hard, and I hope to represent the interests and all the perspectives around the table in a fair manner. Thank you.
All right. Also, there are no persons signed up to speak on this item unless we have people writing at this moment. Okay. There are no persons to speak on this item. So now we can move to the election.
Excellent. So moving to the second part of this, now holding a vote for the election of chairperson. Okay, Mr. Hollis, can we conduct a vote, please?
Yes. So for the record, since we only have one person nominated for chairperson, you can say yea and nay to that person if you'd like them to be nominated. And there are no persons signed up to speak on this item for the election of chairperson. So with that being said, I have Oh, okay, that's what happened. My apologies, I picked the wrong one. Okay, so now, shall Viola Gonzalez be elected chairperson for Measures BJ&Y Independent Citizen School Facilities Bond Oversight Committee for the 2025 unexpired term. On the motion, Member Nelson.
Yes.
Member Jones III.
Yes.
Member Dawson.
Yes.
Member Clark is absent. Secretary Gonzalez. Chair Butler.
Yes.
Secretary Gonzalez, you are now Chair Gonzalez for the BJY Committee for the 2025 unexpired term.
Excellent. Just a quick question or point of order. Does that turn over now and does current Chair Gonzalez, does she?
Not at the moment. Chair Gonzalez will take over after the elections. The
Got
full
it,
elections
okay.
are complete.
All right. Okay, so moving along to, thank you very much. Moving along to the next item and nomination. This is nominations for chairperson of the BJNY Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. Oh, right, vice chair. Do we have any nominees or nominations to be made for vice chair? Yes, Member Jones III.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to nominate Member Nelson as a vice chairperson.
I second that.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, is there public comments on this item?
There are no public comments, but I will also give him his 2 minutes of time for speech.
I don't really have a speech. I guess thanks, Member Jones. And I did want to thank Chair Butler for his service, and I want to thank Secretary Viola Gonzalez for her service this past year. So appreciate you guys. I accept the nomination.
Excellent, and it's been my pleasure. Okay, and as there are no other nominees or no other nominations, and is there public comment on this item?
There are no public comment on the nomination for vice chair.
Okay, so then we will move on to the second part of this, the vote for election of the vice chair. Mr. Hollis, can we conduct a vote to, a vote on election of the vice chair, please?
Yes, current chair, or that's the chair-elect. Okay, got it. But anyway, as stated before, since there's only one nomination, you just say yea or nay to that nomination. And there are no public commenters on this item. That being said, shall Andy Nelson be elected the vice chair for Measures BJ&Y Independent Citizen School Facilities Bond Oversight Committee for the 2025 unexpired term. On the motion, Member Nelson?
Yes.
Jones III?
Yes.
Member Dawson?
Yes.
Member Clark is absent. Is that Chair-elect Gonzalez? And Chair Butler?
Yes.
All right. Andrew Nelson is the vice chair for the 2025 unexpired term.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, moving on. This is item C.-5 on the nominations for secretary of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. Do we have any nominations for a secretary?
I'd like to nominate Andrea Dawson for secretary.
I would like to second.
Excellent. Any other nominations? Okay, and I think nominee Dawson has, what, 2 minutes? Do they get 2 minutes for a acceptance speech?
So I will take the job, as they say, and I want to just say thank you so much, Andrew, for doing such a good job as chair and being consistent and really a good leader, so thank you.
Thank you for the kind words. Is there public comments on this item?
There are no public commenters for this item. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the second part of that item. It's now election of the secretary. Mr. Hollis, can we please conduct a vote for election of secretary?
Yes, and for the last time, since there's only one person that's been nominated, yea or nay to that vote. So also, there's no public commenters for this item. So with that being said, shall member Andrea Dawson be elected secretary for the Measures BJNY Independent Citizen School Facilities Bond Oversight Committee for the 2025 unexpired term. On the motion, here you go, member Jones III,
Yes.
member Dawson.
Yeah.
Member Clark is absent. Let's see if I can. Actually, you know what? I'll just go back here. Vice Chair-elect Nelson.
Yes.
We have Chair Butler
Yes.
and Chair-elect Gonzalez. Right. His secretary, or Andre Dawson, has been elected secretary for the 2025 unexpired term.
Wonderful. Okay, so sounds like we have a very diligent set of officers going forward, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to it. Okay, so item D, speaker request cards, as I mentioned.
And if
Yeah.
I may, Chair, now you can pass the gavel.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so Chair Gonzalez, would you like to sort of conduct the meeting from here? Excellent.
If, on the item E, I wondered if, could we have all the minutes approved as one? There are item 25-2144, item 25-2689, item 25-2724, item 25-2908, and even if you are not present, I think you legally can vote on the minutes. I'm concerned about quorum, so if we could agree to take them all as one motion, I would recommend that. Could I have a motion to that effect?
If I may, Chair Gonzalez, so just before that, we did have speaker request cards. If there was nothing to mention on D, I just wanted to bring your attention to that.
Oh, thank you.
And also for E, as you're stating, yes, we can take them up concurrently, but I will record them separately on the minutes, just for the record. To understand.
Okay. If we could, yes?
Can I ask a question of staff? I mean, so my dilemma is that I wasn't on the CBOC when these meetings were held. And I know we want to get through this and forum and all like that, but I feel some kind of way about voting to accept some minutes I wasn't at the meeting for, to be honest with you. So can you just tell me what will be the impact if I abstained?
We'll be able to adopt them.
I guess like for the first part on mic, but I guess that's your decision. you can vote either way you like, depending on how you feel about the situation. It doesn't ding you for voting yea or nay or abstaining from the motion, but I can't tell you how to.
Thank Mr. Heller. My question is actually, will the item pass? if I
No, it would
abstain?
not.
I do want to assure you that I think I was a secretary of most of these minutes, except for the site visits. And to the best of my knowledge, they are as accurate as I could make them. And for most of them, Andrea was my second set of eyes and my conscience. So I hope that that's some reassurance and that we could adopt them today, because we need to move on. There's nothing in there. I wish I could say that there were earth-shattering decisions that we made in these minutes, but they are not. And, with that assurance, maybe we could take a vote on that.
I still need a motion and a second to vote on all minutes that were stated by the chair.
Yes, I move to approve or vote on all of the minutes concurrently.
And I was second.
All right. I do have that. Also, I will mention that there are no public commenters for either E.-1, 2, 3, or 4. So with that being stated, Chair, is it okay to move to a vote?
Yes, please.
All right. On the motion to approve E.-1, 2, 3, and 4 of the minutes on the agenda as stated. Member Jones?
Aye.
Member Clark is absent. Member Butler?
Yes.
Secretary Dawson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Nelson?
Yes.
And Chair Gonzalez? Yes. All minutes are approved.
On the next item, where we have nothing on item F, on item G, unfinished business, we have item 24, 23, 30 to A, and this is around the amendment number 3, the spending plan, and included in the agenda is a request for an update on the bond rating and the upcoming third draw, an update on the OUSD plans of a proposed bond sale in January 2026. As reference, staff have given us some older documents that take us to an update that was done in the spring, and kind of a memorandum, cover memorandum dated December 8th that was from Denise Sadler, the superintendent. So if you could kick us off.
Great. Good evening, and I just wanted to start out. I guess you're previously Chair Butler. Really appreciate the time and energy that you dedicated to the CBOC, and one of the things that our team has really benefited tremendously by the feedback under your leadership that has informed a lot of different work. And just really wanted to appreciate you, because I know how much time and energy it takes to put all this together, and just wanted to thank you for that before we get into this item.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
So there's nothing new in the documents, but I wanted to bring them as a reference so that we had something that would be available to answer your questions, because we are at a critical juncture right now around the overall draws of the bond. And I think that's the nature of the question, what is the third draw that is going to happen on the bond? It's going to be $185 million. And the vast majority of that money in that draw is going to support the construction and the major projects that are coming forward, right? And so Roosevelt is already in construction. It would be McClymonds. it would be CCPA, MLA, and then Garfield when that comes online. So this would be kind of happening in January, and it also unlocks other projects that are waiting for funding to be available. And one of the ones that you've probably heard the most of from community feedback in general is around air quality, heat conditions within classrooms. There's $8 million that is there. There's about $8 million in deferred maintenance that becomes available. So as we go in through these draws, the draws actually open up new projects that we would be launching as soon as the bond sale moves forward. So that's where we are in the life cycle. We're currently spending down draw 2. And so it's that we're in probably the heaviest time as you launch construction and all of these projects, when you're burning through your cash within your bond program to complete those projects. And so we're right at the beginning of that phase. And so there's about, in total projects, it's about $450 million worth of projects that are going to become very active with a high intensive cash need. And so that's kind of where we are in the bond. And I think that you all had some questions about it, and I can reference some of the documents if that's helpful as we move through it. Sure.
So, first I'd like to know if you can explain a little bit the process of selling the bonds to our committee, and how the district's bond rating the general fund's bond rating might affect the sale of the bonds, and how the capital improvements bond rating might affect the sale of the bonds, and what's that going to look like. And then the other thing that I had asked for related to all this was a cash flow for the next year. Like, what is the cash flow that's expected for the next year on all these projects? And I tie that back to, I looked at the overall district budget last night, and and buried in the documents in the capital funds is what I thought was spending of, I shouldn't maybe say it before I find it again, but like 9 million next year, and that didn't seem right to me, and I'm not reading it right probably, but it's in, the 280-page, yeah, anyway, I'll find it in a minute while you start to respond to my question.
I'm going to actually take this as an opportunity to introduce, I don't know if Sele has been introduced to you. I think she was on the CBOC walk of several other properties, but Sele Nadal-Hayes, longtime district employee, left for a little while, has come back to join us as the executive director for construction. And she's going to give you kind of the update around particularly the bond rating and those elements. And previously, has experience as a CFO in an organization, so brings a rich depth of financial knowledge to the team. So I'll turn it over to you.
Is it okay if I'm here? Okay, great. Good evening, committee. Again, I'm Sele Nadal-Hayes, Executive Director of Construction for the district. It's an honor to spend some time with you this evening talking about this really important part of our work. I'm going to give you a summary of where we stand with the bond sale currently. We're looking to do our third draw, and then we'll talk a little bit about your question around the district's credit rating and the impact of that on the bond sale as it's forthcoming. As you know, we were initially scheduled to go out for our bond for the draw in November. The sale had to be postponed because a required item was not agendized by the Alameda County Board of Supervisors, and so we're now working to get that rescheduled for January. And we're committed to this draw, to completing this draw. It's part of our long-term capital plan, and the delay has a small impact on our cash flow, but we're working to manage it and to ensure that projects can continue, and we'll provide a revised schedule and spending plan as we get to that point. Your really excellent question around credit rating is important. As the way the bond sale works is that our bond, our package, is presented to investors and they are they analyze it and determine whether it's an appropriate purchase with appropriate returns for their investor group. They will look at the risk involved in purchasing the bonds that we have for sale, and they'll determine whether what price they want to offer for our bonds. This is very common in the municipal bond market. We can estimate in a window based on the history, but until we actually put out the call, we won't know exactly what rates investors are willing to purchase our bonds for. So our credit rating gives investors a look at what the possible risk might be and influences how much interest they will require of us in order to engage in that risk. So you may have heard back in September that there are a number of credit bureaus that give ratings on municipalities. Fitch downgraded the district's issuer rating from BBB plus to BBB, and they also assigned a negative outlook. They also lowered our GO bond rating from AA to AA minus. They cited in that, as I'm sure you're interested, why would they do that? Don't they know that our buildings are really important to us and we really want a really successful program to serve our students and community? They cited a number of structural and financial headwinds. They named the district's failed consolidation plans in 2000, including reversing decisions about closing schools. And they also cited prior teacher strikes and labor costs, the end of our pandemic era funding, which we as a district have used for a number of purposes, and potential liabilities. And they particularly named what they described, and I'll quote, irresolute decision-making on school closures. So they look across the whole district, not just at our little bond program. It's not little, but little compared to other things. And they determined that that unless the district undertakes some comprehensive operational restructuring, that we as a district would not be able to maintain our reserves above the state required minimums, and that an investment in our bond had some risk, more than it had previously. That downgrade and negative outlook really does reflect a growing concern about our long-term financial stability or sustainability as a district, and it may increase the borrowing costs or make investors more cautious about purchasing our bonds. We still have the ability to issue the bonds, but it's under these less favorable conditions than in prior years, and it means that we may pay more over time for this capital. We do have there are a lot of reasons why our rating is not completely, the worst it could be. There are a lot of reasons why our district is a good investment to investors, in the bond program in particular. But they cited those reasons for downgrading our ratings in that way. I will also share a little bit, as they were looking at our district financial context and the risk factors, they really did note that we were spending down our fund balance very, very quickly in the district's overall budget, and that they also noted the warning, the very clear warning from our county Office of Education that unless we significantly change our strategy, that our local control is in jeopardy. So those realities inform our ability to go into the bond market and get great interest rates. So we are still looking to have the third drop in January. We are still monitoring the interest rates and investor sentiment very closely. We're working to make sure that we present ourselves as honestly and favorably as possible to potential investors. And we partner with our financial advisors to ensure that we're telling the story of our district and our program in a way that does help people understand the risk and the context that we're operating in. And so we're gonna power forward, and we're gonna continue to generate the resources that will allow us to continue with the program and the schedule of projects that we have promised to our community, and it's within that context. So I hope that answers the first parts of your questions. And open to questions about what I asked, or
Do you mind if I just,
sorry, I don't know.
I just want to add one element to it, and I'll try to stay away from that microphone. Two elements that are actually positive for us is actually the work that you all have been doing here. The audits, the process around the bond program itself is strong. There's not an immediate cash flow issue that's immediately impacting the bond program. And in terms of the overall structure of the bond program in the city of Oakland, the actual environment within the city of Oakland has been relatively positive in terms of, I think Moody's, when they do their evaluation, they're also looking at the city of Oakland in some of the context locally, like unemployment rates and things like that, which are still strong. So like there are some headwinds that are facing the overall bond ratings, but you know we're really excited, and we do think that we're going to have a successful sale in January. It was that clerical administrative error at the county that kind of delayed it. So that, I just wanted to make sure that there are multiple ratings, and just honestly the level of investigation that they do into the district's finances is incredibly intense. And I just cannot underscore how thoroughly they went through with questionnaires and different information, and they're polling and they're reading all of the reports, all the information that comes to CBOC, all the things that are in the board's purview. They do review all of it. And so it's pretty impressive to see the depth that they go into to develop these ratings. And we're open to questions.
Go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Chair. This was great. I had a question. Just when you mentioned the bond rating, and in particular, one of the reasons why it declined, degraded, whatever word you want to use, is the back and forth with the consolidation plans. So I have a question, and this is: are the individual school sites, have they been assessed from a financial perspective, like their value? I'm asking this for a reason, because it connects to that.
The value of the physical building?
Yeah, the building and the land, like Skyline, for example.
Yeah, yes. So as part of the facilities master plan process, every 5 years, we conduct a district-wide assessment of all of our properties. The last time we did that benchmarking was for the 2020 master plan. The 2025 master plan is in the process of being finalized, and so we've done that assessment. It's just not final yet, but we do have updated property values for every parcel and piece of the district that we have. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And just quick follow-up, is there an estimated timeline when that data would be available?
I believe it's in January.
January?
You will get the first opportunity to review it at the next CBOC meeting.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's all I got to ask.
Who is bond counsel, and who's in charge of this?
Sorry. The district's bond counsel is ORIC. They have several names, but we call them ORIC.
It's ORIC,
Yes,
yeah.
ORIC is our
Okay.
bond counsel. And we have financial advisors. ISOM is our advisor, and then we've also worked with CBOC, and I can't remember all the other names in that group as well. But we have lots of good advice and from experienced municipal bond managers.
Great. So since we're on that subject and we're talking about them, if there's ever a thought about going out for new advisors, this committee needs to be involved. In the past, we have always had an opportunity to have a seat at the table, at least to observe the process, to make sure that it was transparent and in real, true consideration of what's going to be best for the district. And there's a reason for it, and I would just say that years ago it wasn't so much that way, and so it has been to date now.
Thank you.
First, welcome. Great to meet you. I'm not going to do the old man thing and talk about how I knew your family. But anyway.
You knew my family?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Both
Well, that's
Both of your parents, actually, so,
pretty great people.
yeah, absolutely. Anyway. Just to start, I would recommend, I would request, actually, that you would read the bylaws that are specific to our committee. You may already have, I'm not saying you haven't, but they're different than than all the other bylaws, and so part of what Andrea is talking about is reflected there. So then I have some random and naive questions. Just to be super clear, right, the interest that we pay, the interest that's paid to investors, like, comes out of the voter-approved amount, right? So it reduces the amount that can be put in schools out of that $735 million bond.
Yes, there's a part of the 735 million is allocated to the fees associated with the.
Yeah, and so the rate of return, the interest comes out of that.
No.
Oh, sorry.
I don't, there is a fee that the district pays for
Yeah.
the sale, and I think that's what Sally was talking about. However, the dollar amount that the district receives on the end for the sale is the full amount of the sale for the bonds. It is the interest rate that is charged back to the taxpayer is where that goes. So there is a fee that we pay that is a result of it that does come into the bond around the sale of the bond, but the actual dollar amount that the district will receive is the voter-approved dollar amount. So over the end of the sale of the Measure Y bonds, you will have $735 million worth of bonds that have been sold. When the rate changes, it adjusts the fee that is on your tax bill in terms of what you get for the bond. And so it is important to monitor both, but there is a nexus between the bond fees that we pay and the sale rate. So there is a nexus there.
I told you they were naive.
No.
Do you have another?
I have 4 questions.
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
The second question is, this is just, so are we to interpret this as a signal from investors that investors are saying, you need to close schools, or are they saying you need to be more resolute in your decision-making in general?
So the Fitch and Moody's ratings are not messages from investors. They're messages from the rating.
From the rating agencies.
And so the message from investors will come when we actually go to the market and we hear from them what they're willing to pay as a result of the risk analysis that they conduct. I don't know that they would be so specific to say you must close schools, but they would look at the analysis by the rating agencies, and they would say the district needs to do something different with its budgeting and its footprint, perhaps, to be able to meet the expectations to get their rating higher, to make it a less risky investment.
Let me just restate then. Is it a message from the rating agencies that we need to close schools, or is it just that we need to be more resolute?
Yeah, I'm going to hand it to.
The issue is less about the number of schools that you operate, but the structural deficit that the district faces because of that, right? So, like, essentially, if you have many schools, that's fine as long as you're in good financial health, right? But there are multiple factors that go into a structural deficit. One of those is the efficiencies of the district by the number of schools you operate, right? So it is one critical factor, and it's a factor that they have seen that the district has not had a consistent approach to it over time, which becomes a risk around the finances of the district. So it is the district's finances, and there will be a board meeting on Wednesday where that'll be a primary topic. And just one distinction about it that's interesting around the rating, the voters of Oakland have a very strong track record, of being able to pay for, the bond, the rate that you're being charged. So, like, the question isn't around the city of Oakland and the conditions within the city of Oakland, but because the bond program operates within the context of the school district, that is where the school district's financial state and the decision-making comes to play. And so that's where that happens.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell me what the County Board of Supervisors role is in this?
The County Board of Supervisors is required to authorize the sale of bonds within its jurisdiction of any public agencies within the district, or within their within their borders. So they're required to have a public meeting where they share that this is happening and allow the public to comment and allow others to opine on it. And it's mostly procedural. Honestly, every public agency that has a bond has to go through their county, and it's an opportunity for the public to say what they think about the particular municipality going out for the bond.
Okay, thank you. One more minor question. Can you guys just say for the record, is the Board of Directors of Oakland Unified School District allowed to access facilities bond money to make up a general operating deficit in any way?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
For the record.
One step further, even the sale of a property has to go back into supporting properties, generally speaking. The only way that you can generate revenue that would support the district's general fund would be through lease structures and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Is another question?
Oh, it was more of a comment. So the other thing that can be done if we don't get a good bond sale is refinancing at a later date. And so it fluxes, and our committee would like to know when that happens also. So anyway, I mean, that's why it's so important to have good financial advisors, because we want them to do it right and see the opportunities for refinancing. So yeah.
I'll actually, in this bond sale, it would be refinancing some of the older bonds to give, that would give a relief to taxpayers that are currently paying a higher rate for previous bonds. In measure, I'm not sure if it was in measure B, J at different points.
Yeah.
So that we're always looking, and that's, I agree with you 100%. The financial advisors are monitoring that and looking for opportunities to save the voters some money as they move forward with that. And that is part of this current sale, is to refinance several bonds.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one last question. And I understand our purview is over measures B, J, and Y, but I want to, have there been any thoughts in relationship to not just what we heard tonight, right, about the status of the rating, but just the city of Oakland just overall, right? I think a lot of voters, residents, taxpayers are starting to feel that bond fatigue, right? The city of Oakland's trying to push some things through. So I'm wondering, has there been any analysis that incorporate that reality as well? Because as much as we can say people love our schools, and they do, but after a while, and then you're hearing, if you're feeling like you're not getting a return. So I'm just curious, has there been any thought, any strategy, et cetera?
I think one of the pieces in terms of where we were timing our bond sale was there are other municipalities that are going out for bond sales. The city of Oakland, the Peralta system. So you want to actually, we do work in collaboration with them to understand when their sale is coming out, because you don't want to saturate the market with too much from one place. I think to your point about the overall load on voters, I think that's the part that is we just have to do a great job at implementing our bond program, right? Like that is like the key element of it. And I think that is a piece that, we hope through, kind of the work that we do, that we are making sound decisions on behalf of the voters. And that's a critical factor. And actually, I mean, we've had conversations about some of the projects at Garfield in general, is that we do want to make sure that we're making smart investments so that you do see the long-term impact of bonds for generations for, families.
Are there any more questions from the committee on this particular item? Thank you.
Well, actually, if it relates to this
Is that
item.
Preston?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and one other thing we did not talk about, and it was in one of the questions, was I do think that we will come back with a cash flow analysis, and we'll have Mr. Izze join and do it in a future CBOC meeting to just validate where we are around the overall cash flow for the bond program. But I can tell you right now it's healthy, and we're just trying to get the bond sale to get prepared for future increases in expenditures.
Yeah, so I do have one more question on page 43 of this report. At 1025 Second Avenue, it says that 13.5 million estimated demolition of buildings. And as I recall, in Wednesday's board meeting, there's an item for $7 million, approval for $7 million for demolition. So is
Andrea, what page are you on?
page 43.
Okay.
So, has that changed, and is this like not quite up to date, or?
So
what?
this was, yes, this is definitely not up to date, and there's a couple of variables that are in there around that. One, as we started to move through, and this is actually the next item as well, when we started to move through with the demolition of, first with the Hillside campus and then the beginning of the Ralph Bunche campus, we found that a lot of the initial quotes that we had for pricing was coming significantly lower than the original quote. So that is reflected there. Also, one of the things that was included in the 1025 demolition was actually having some funding to do something for like the surface and how it would end up. And so that is not included in the current item that'll be at the board meeting. It is purely for the demolition of the building.
Are there any more questions then on this item regarding the facilities, the spend plan, or any questions associated with the attachments?
So, I actually do have one more question.
Okay.
So it's related to the spending plan, and it's related to the interest that we get back from, on the sales of the bonds. And so where does that interest go? In other words, if I look at the general budget fund, does it come back into the capital program, or does it go into the general fund?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to, I think both of us are in agreement. It goes back to the capital program. You can track line items, particularly when you see the updates to the expenditures. There is an interest in B and J, and there will be in Y as well. And then you get to reallocate and utilize some of the interest for other projects as well. So there is an ongoing, as you have the cash, you are actually investing that as well to continue to get a return on that until you've expended it on a project. So there are some line items. Next time we have the, not the spending plan, but the expenditure reports that you review, we can highlight some of those areas where you can see the interest that's developed.
I think that would be good, because
Yeah.
I think we should be able to see that too. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, great.
All right.
Now I'm done.
Now, we can move on to the next item. Do we have any other comments on this item from the public?
Yes, we do have Asada Olakbala. How much time would you like to allot for public comment, Chair?
Couple of minutes.
2 minutes?
Y'all don't realize how serious this is. The city of Oakland had the same issue, and I didn't get clarification. Do you currently have a negative bond rating? Yes or no? If you have a negative bond rating, it is highly recommended that you do not pursue any bonds, because you can, but you're greatly at risk if you do. You're going to be dealing with high interest rate. And this is the city, and it's recommended by the grand jury because the city of Oakland was told by their finance department not to pursue any bonds with a negative rating. So did you determine clearly that you have a negative rating at this point? And what's the recommendation to continue to pursue? Because I think that's what they're saying. And it's at risk. You're at risk when you do that. And is the district, this should have been brought up a long time ago, before the board deals with this budget tomorrow. This should have been presented to the board facilities meeting. This is serious. And if you're hearing what they're saying, a contributing factor is we have too many schools. We have 20 schools with less than 300 students, and they are recommending not to close schools. McClyman included, with 278 students, needs to be closed, mostly because you're not going to do anything. The second part of what I want to say is this. In this document, it is said that McClymonds is under design phase. We are supposed to be under construction phase, starting in July. They moved all of the children to half of the building, took furniture out and put it in storage, and now they're saying in the design phase? They have reneged on, and it's probably because you don't have the money. I don't know. But this is ridiculous. You should not be in a position, the board should have heard this. I appreciate you are hearing it. And it should have been heard in the facilities meeting of the board.
Chair,
Thank you, ma'am.
can I ask one more follow-up question? of
Go ahead.
staff? So, point of clarity for us. There's two ratings. There's a rating for the capital fund, and there's a rating for the general fund, the district. And am I clear in my understanding that investors understand that the capital program is basically a standalone program inside of the district? And so they have a AAA minus rating, and the general fund is the one that has the triple B minus, negative. I believe that's the way I read it, because I did read these ratings too. And so when investors look, they look at the whole picture, but are they most concerned about how the bond program has been run and is running when they sell these,
Yeah, it's.
when we sell these bonds?
It's a little of both, and Sally, jump in if I don't give a complete answer. The bond rating is, there are scales of bond rating, so it's not that it's more around directionality. If your bond rating is lower, there's gonna be higher interest rates that you pay. The bond program and the sale of our bonds is influenced by the district's general financial obligations, and what both organizations are saying, there's a negative outlook for Oakland. So what they are saying for Oakland Unified School District, I want to be very clear, like it is the city of Oakland has its own bond rating, Oakland Unified School District has its rating as well. That rating is looking negative, the outlook, because they're looking for the board to make decisions, as you've heard in public comment and in the news, is that there needs to be decisions around the structural deficit, and the number of schools that we operate is part of that. So the outlook is negative. The bond rating will move up and down, and then, there is an urgency around, for the district, and not right now, but to actually utilize where the bond rating is right now to go out for a sale, because it provides the cash for the ongoing construction projects. And we are really healthy right now in the current program for all of the major projects. They are fully funded. There's not any delays based on funding. It is the back half of those projects that the third draw would be supporting.
But the bond program has a separate rating.
It does not.
It does not?
It does not. There is a rating for Oakland Unified School District, and it is a rating that would be used for our bond sale.
So Moody's assigns a rating for the bond.
Yeah.
That is, in conjunction with the district's rating,
Yeah.
but it does technically have a separate rating. It's just, there's not a big difference.
It kind of sort of does. In other
They're-
words,
Yeah.
for investors, they can see
They
the
can
difference.
see both,
It's
and they
really
should
what
see
I'm
both.
getting my
Tied.
point to. They're
Yeah.
tied, but they're
Yeah.
tethered.
I would also add
Yeah.
that the shifts that we're talking about, the downgrading that we're talking about, on the Fitch ratings, we were previously in the medium grade quality at BBB plus. We're still in that medium grade quality band at BBB. And similarly, for the Moody's rating of A1, we're at the upper medium quality. So investors may still want to buy our bonds. It's just when they think about the outlook and the rates of return and the timeline for the rates of return, they'll look at the situation wholly. Yeah, take you for those follow-ups.
You have a follow-up? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may, Chair, actually two follow-ups, that's okay? The first one, so I'm seeing in here about the estimated reimbursement from the states. Right, so it's a two-part question. The first one is, how likely is that? Right, in full, partial, or none at all? And the second part of that question, this is all part of the first question, is what would be the intended use of this reimbursed funding?
Let me start out, like, this is actually, I'm really glad that you landed on that page, because it is one of the system improvements that, you know, Pranita Rambisi, that is on the planning side, we had not been submitting some of our projects to the state for reimbursement, right? And so Glenview, for example, is a project that's been done for a while. It had not been submitted. So it is not a question of if, it's when. So when OPSC provides, the Office of Public School Construction provides, every single one of our schools has a level of reimbursement that is available for school districts that invest in improving the facilities. Every school has a dollar amount on it, right? That should be an important variable that you use in determining which projects you are moving forward with, right? So if you have two schools of similar condition, right, serving the same number of kids, one has $10 million associated with it in terms of reimbursement, the other one has $1 million, there's a $9 million advantage for you to address that facility, right? However, you don't get that money immediately. There's currently, it takes 5 to 6 years. And so even when you see Proposition 2 come out from the state, and the state does this every, 8 years or so, that they or even more frequently than that, there's a line of projects that are waiting to get the reimbursement from it. So it's more about when you get in line. So for example, the McClymonds project, the Roosevelt project, the CCPA project, the Garfield project, the MLA project, those will all get in line for some future funding that will come to the district 5, 6, 7 years from now, right? But when it comes, it complements your bond program, and it actually is really one of the reasons why we're able to do that with OPSC is because we do have a continuity of the bond program in Oakland that allows you to have these projects. So it's a really critical long-term strategy around funding, and it is really important for your bond program to manage that as well. And we're really excited to have submitted all of those past projects, and then you're in line waiting for the state to release additional funds. Sorry, that's a long answer, but.
Oh, that's fine. And then here's the second question, the last question. I'm looking at Garfield, I'm looking at all this red.
Yep.
That the budget now is, the anticipated budget now is seized by $14 to $19 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing some of the challenges relates to the mobile modular cost that was impacted because of the LA fires. And it's not even a question, it's just more acknowledgement, right? And just want to really emphasize that when we look at the draws, right, or even we look at a bond, right, and when you look at a decade, and I understand that it's not always easy to anticipate the rising construction costs, which is a real thing, but I think it leaves something to be said about inflation as well, right? And I just want to just name that, right, because what 70 million looks like in 2020, I mean, it's 2025 is not 70, and then while we get there, so there's more of me just bringing attention to that than it is an actual question.
Yeah, I did have one question or a set of questions. Thanks for presenting everything, Mrs. Nadal Hayes. It's very helpful, but I'm trying to read between the lines a little bit, and maybe you can help me here. So you mentioned that there was a rating downgrade, and also maybe connected, maybe separate, there's also a sort of negative outlook. So focusing on that negative outlook, or the outlook being negative, if I'm reading between the lines, is that an implication that the cost of borrowing will be higher later?
If the district does not take action to improve the financial outlook for the district as a whole, then it is likely that our interest rates will continue to be higher. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
we're done on the, I think we've beaten this to death. Thank you very much. We can go to the next item. 2513, excuse me, G2, 2513-14A1, declaring continuing emergency and authorizing district staff. There's a discussion when last you were present about, and what's happened since. We're anxious.
So there was an emergency declaration and a couple, and I want to acknowledge the level of feedback that we received from CBOC on that time is that, like, we were moving forward around the solar projects, and there were two different phases, phase 2 and phase 3. And phase 2 was essentially the ones that had already been DSA approved, and they're actually being constructed right now at school sites, and will be ahead of the NEM 3 deadline in April. And so we're tracking that, and we'll definitely report that out to you all. And it's one of the, if you look at some of the options that the board had in terms of supporting the general fund, you'll notice that one of the major reductions that doesn't impact people, doesn't impact, is the utility costs are going to be going down based on the inclusion of those solar projects. What we did, and when we brought this emergency resolution to the board, is we repurposed the funds that were there for the phase 3 projects to support the demolition of the buildings that were having both ongoing security issues at the sites, but also had needed to be demolished and move forward rapidly based on declining environment in each of the locations. And those 3 locations were Hillside, the Ralph Bunche campus, and the third was not for demolition, but was for securing the building and removing the encampment at 1025 across the street. And so, you know, updates on where we are on both of those. Hillside has been completed, and that's on the Castlemont campus. And so that has been completely demolished and removed. The 1025, the encampment, and Ms. Dawson was there as well during the summertime as the team worked with the folks on the encampment to remove the encampment, which was incredibly difficult, and it took the entire summer. But now that building has been shored up as much as possible to prevent re-encampment from engaging with that school site. I think one of the things, the conditions in the neighborhood around here, there are some areas where there are local encampments where people do repeatedly try to gain entry to that building. And so it has been shored up, and there currently is not an encampment, and there's ongoing security at the site. The third property, and Mr. Dalhays has been helping with that property as well as Ralph Bunche, was moving forward with demolition, and there was a area in one of the buildings where they had used a form of caulking in some of the older buildings that had PCBs in it. It was something that had been identified through testing. We absolutely had identified it as something to be remediated. Unfortunately, there's definitely an arsonist within the area that has lit the building on fire multiple times, and that has created a delay. Two aspects to the delay on that property. One is that issue itself, the fire. Secondly was the government shutdown, because every type of cleanup that involves PCBs needs to have the EPA approve your testing plan and then your remediation plan. And when they went on hiatus, I guess, we were not able to get an approved plan, although they had provided us feedback on the original plan. And so we have been moving forward with containerizing the different elements for long-term removal. The disposal is really based on the testing that happens. And so we now that the EPA is back and in partnering with the district, we are moving forward with the demolition of that property. And so the emergency resolution remains until we can demolish that building. And I would just add that, like, one of the most important parts of that is the reason why the emergency resolution exists is purely because of the fact that it allows us to go into contract faster so that we can really address the things real time. And we have contractors that are ready. and to go on the site, and we're just in the process of like finalizing that remediation plan and a disposal location for the things on that site. So we've been very proactive on it all summer, but it has been the challenge that it has existed for issues that are beyond our control. So that's the update on where we are on the demolition of all three. And I would just say that there is a resolution coming that was passed in the Facilities Committee to move forward the demolition of 1025 and the Ethel Moore building. And we know that both of those have some historical significance, and it would have to go through the city process as well. But there is it passed 3-0 out of the Facilities Committee, and it will move to the full board on Wednesday night.
Questions from the committee?
So Wednesday night, it's the $7 million allocation, and so we can save from the general fund on this security that's being spent every month. And then there's another resolution on there for Ralph Bunch too, I think, for cleanup, which it jumped a really big number, and that's because of what you just said. Okay, so is that changing the allocation of the overall budget that was estimated to do Ralph Bunch project or not?
It is definitely within the original estimate, but it is more than what we had originally anticipated, because there are only, and I don't know, Sally, if you want to jump in, but there's when you have any level of contamination, whether it be lead, arsenic, there's different areas where you can dispose of that. And one of the things I will just highlight in the spending plan that has been often lifted up by the community is we have, whenever a project has come under budget, we've been allocating some of the funding into any sort of soils remediation category within the spending plan. So it's not coming out of the project budget, and I believe it's about $1.5 million right now. So if there is a school site that has contamination in the soils and we need to address that, you can leverage those funds to take care of that remediation. I know that you all are familiar with that because of the Cole project that is now the Marcus Foster building, but we're trying to create space in the budget because we know that the soils across Oakland have contamination that has been there for a long time, and it does impact our schools. So in terms of we are still currently within the budget for what we're anticipating for 1025 and Bunch, but the final issue is just really around where you can, you have to find a location that will receive the waste, and that's where we're currently navigating with EPA to identify a location. Okay. I don't know if did I hit it, or is there? Taylor has the most up-to-date information on it.
So the budget has increased from the original projection from before we started the demolition, but not the overall increase, not the overall projections from before we started the demolition. And most of that is because of the environmental remediation and needing to not just ensure that the site is secure, so that the community is not impacted directly by the hazards, but also so that we can perform the required testing that will allow us to characterize the waste and then identify the appropriate waste receiver for that. We've been working with the EPA to identify where in Region 9 can accept our particular combination of hazards, because there's a lot of restrictions, rightfully.
Yeah. The board has approved, actually in a previous action, so this is actually the contract that's coming forward for feasibility studies. And the feasibility studies, what they will do is they will look at each of the properties and do an analysis on a wide array of things, including soil testing as well, so that when you are, the district is determining how to utilize that property, the next phase of that property is well known in terms of what potential uses are. Zoning, what are some of the issues that you might impact in construction. So actually, like, in terms of the demolition of 1025, what that will do is it will absolutely give more information and increase the overall value of that property to not have two structurally unsound buildings on the property. So that is, they are going to be conducting feasibility studies, and just, this is a lot, but I just want to name, the way that we've structured things around the program is that we are going to have the facilities master plan, because that is the biggest driver for your priorities as a district. And it sets up the next potential future bond, which is down the road, but like you start planning for that now. From that, you'll have the valuations for like how much work needs to be done at individual sites. It doesn't actually give the full valuation, as Member Jones, you'd asked about like what's the value of the property. It gives you the value of the building itself and what it would take to replace the building, and what's the amount of work that needs to be done to the building to lift it up to a accept like a modern standard, right? So you get those two things in the facilities master plan. That should inform any ongoing decisions around the footprint, around how you restructure the district, some of those things that Ms. Hayes was talking about in terms of the things that are impacting the bond, the bond rating for the district. Then once we have that master plan in place, the feasibility study is ongoing. It will start with the adoption of that contract. It will be ongoing, and then we'll pivot to doing an asset management plan, which includes things like the Marcus Foster, the first floor Marcus Foster, what are potential uses for it. There is space within the contract that you're discussing that's going to be on the next board meeting to also look at the other properties that haven't been analyzed yet and do a conceptual design of what could be used on the other properties that weren't included in those first three properties that you named. So we will get a lot of information about our properties in April, and then we will be bringing forward an asset management plan to you all, to the facilities committee, and to the full board for adoption.
I have a related question. Somewhere in our vast number of pages, there's a mention of the 3 Rs resolution. How does that fit in with what you're saying?
Yeah, in terms of one of the things about restructuring the footprint of the district and all of these pieces is that there is an upfront cost around facilities. If you imagine just getting a classroom, TK hubs are one of the things that the governor moved forward with a plan to move to universal TK, but there's a big facility issues that not just Oakland has, but all districts were not designed to have an additional transitional kindergarten grade in them, right? So that is something that if you want to open a transitional kindergarten class, there's an investment on the front side to be able to do that, right? So in terms of what it means is the 3 Rs resolution was a board resolution that had been passed, that the board was actively exploring one of those areas, which was restructuring and redesign of a school. We had recommended as a facilities team to put forward $3 million so that you had a fund available if you were going to close, consolidate, merge schools, that you could invest some of that funding to make that a reality, right? That actually was pulled out of, I do want to name that there was an amendment that was made that did remove that from the actual adoption. But it is something for us, and we are monitoring that, and I'm, around what would be recommendations moving forward to make sure that there is funding available to address those issues around the 3 Rs resolution. So, and there was an element that was around the school redesign, and the Brookfield was named as one of the school sites, and that school there was a charter closure, and there now is a Montessori program in that school. And there were some funds in a previous bond that were used to do some of the adjustments to that site because it had been named in Measure J.
Thank you. Are there any? Yes, do you still have one more question? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. I'm noticing here, is this correct that 1025 is zoned as urban residential?
I believe so. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was not a project that was done through the DSA, so it was never DSA approved. And I remember going in throughout my career that there were little signs and placards that said it was never DSA approved. It was approved by the city of Oakland, and that was, at the time, that was the original like assessment that we'd done. The feasibility study will go much deeper, not only in terms of and there is another document that I can share with you that actually includes some of the original conceptual designs for that property, but also there's something that you can do where you change the entitlements to potentially increase the value of the property itself based on how it is designated. So that is one of the things that will come forward as the feasibility study is completed.
One last thing. Apologies, just real quick, this is random. When did Dewey move here? I remember Dewey used to be in the 30s. When did it move here? I'm just curious.
Oh, my
And why? Why did it move? Yeah.
We can definitely get back to you on that one. Yeah, we can definitely get back to you on that one.
Yeah, so related to I'm sorry, Andy. Related to the 3 Rs and the funding that was set aside and then was taken out by resolution. On Wednesday night's board meeting, there's an item right at the beginning of the meeting that is presentation from committees. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of that.
Okay, so the way I read that is that someone from our committee could go and represent our committee and make such a recommendation that they put that we believe that they need to seriously consider, restructuring and doing something different, and that would include re-implementing the 3 Rs resolution and realigning some funding for that. Because to my way of thinking, now this is just my way of thinking, but in the long run, if we had lesser schools, we would have more money to fix the schools up that we really need to fix right now that could be fully enrolled and fully operational schools that are not under enrolled. So if we had 20 less schools, the bond money you would look at the whole program differently with what was left, and we might find enough money for Garfield. So, anyway, so would that be something that we could, as a committee, bring forward on Wednesday night?
I believe it's open. I will follow up with the chair and just get some feedback, and after I talk to general counsel about whether or not it's open for any committee. I do believe it was written that way.
It's written that way. I mean, it's clearly written that way.
Yep.
Because it's the committee's under board policy.
Yeah,
and we're
maybe-
under
there we
board
go.
policy.
If
So-
I may,
This is in reference to a board item for the full
Correct.
school board, which will be on Wednesday.
Correct.
All
Mr.
right.
Hollis, please, Mr. Rakestraw.
yes, Mr. Rexstraw is available to speak on this question. One moment, let me talk with Katie O'Well to ensure that they can lock him in to hear inside of the committee room. Mr. Rexstraw, if you can just continue to speak like a 1, 2, 3.
Sure.
Oh, there you
1,
are.
2, 3.
We got you.
Okay.
All right. Yes, the item is specifically written to invite all of the district-recognized committees, including this one, to come and suggest to the board how it becomes more financially responsible with the district's finances and how to possibly close the gap that it has in its projected revenue and expenses over the next several months.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification. All right. Is that clear?
Well, I have a number of
Do you have a number of questions?
questions and comments and statements and
All right, go for it.
all kinds of stuff.
You have the floor.
Well, the first thing is I just want to go back to the Divine God Brookfield contract. I'd like to just formally request, since this is part of the asset management planning process, that we have a full discussion of that contract here. I'd like to know I'd like to get into the details of well, I mean, of what uses are going to be considered as under the feasibility analysis. I've seen it, I have some idea about it, but I want to understand more about how those uses are going to be analyzed by that contract, actually. So that's one. I'd also like to understand more about the relationship between the listing of 1025 on a heritage survey. It's not a declaration of a historic property in any way, neither city or state. I'd like to understand how that's related to, how closely related that is to CEQA. I know CEQA has to examine historic resources, but I'd like to understand how we're approaching that as a district. So those are those two things. And then on this conversation that was just had, I don't think that this committee can go speak on that item as a committee, because we've had no discussion as a committee about what we think ought to be done. And you know, I have opinions about this that I would want to, you know, that may not be shared by everybody else, and I don't want to. So anyway, first of all, we can't actually go and say, hey, this is what CBOC thinks, because CBOC's never discussed this or made a decision about any of this. So a member can go and say that, but we can't as CBOC do that.
Well, I guess I was trying to segue into so we could have a bit of a conversation, because do we believe that any bond money should be spent on looking at the assets of the district as far as closing schools? This is unrelated to the Devon contract. Yeah. It's the 3 Rs. That 3 Rs was put in and approved by the board once, and then it was taken out because basically they weren't going to close schools. Now, would we agree that they could spend some money? Because if you're going to close schools, they're going to have to spend money, and I'm not sure it should be general fund if you're going to have to, quote, modernize or do some upgrades, you know, to move folks. So I know we didn't really get any notice for this Wednesday night, which is really unfortunate, because here it is, you know, we're Monday night, and you're reading this, last night, that they've posted this. And so I just feel like there should be, if we go and say just what you said at the meeting, you know, like we would like to comment, but basically the way this was structured, there was no opportunity for any of these committees to meet prior to. But yet they've opened it up, and I think it was with maybe good intention, but it kind of is the cart before the horse, right? And so I was just trying to find a way, because I think it is important to say, you know, yes, we would have some opinions, and yeah, anyway.
Are there any other questions associated with, okay. I don't know if under, you know, we see it as kind of a new business. I don't really know how we would discuss this, Andrea. I mean, it's not an agendized item. All of us are individuals, so we can certainly comment on Wednesday. It could well be that all 5 of us would be coming of the same comments or similar comments. You can send e-comments as well. And I think we have expressed, not specifically to this, but I think we have expressed some concern around the appetite in the community for raising additional funds from the community. People look to see how well you manage what you have, and are very unlikely to want to, you know, put out more parcel taxes if they, I mean, that's just common sense. certainly bond rating agencies can, and rate individual people, like such as ourselves, might be interested in buying bonds, you know, for our portfolio. And would we making similar common sense decisions, which is having to do with, do you believe that the management of this organization knows what they're doing, that they're proceeding in a deliberate, thoughtful way, right? I mean, so I think that we could, I think we as individual members could certainly, I think, encourage each other to attend and express some of our concerns, because those decisions that are made in the Facilities Committee and in the full board affect also our ability to make any kind of positive contribution to help. We see that, I think we have certainly heard enough from staff. It doesn't like the cost of anything is going down, and it's not likely to go in the future. And therefore, whatever we have, I think we have to really be really thoughtful about how we're going to spend our money. Also, when I look at the big projects, I myself think, is it realistic for us to do these projects wholesale, you know, versus maybe phasing some of these projects? Because I don't know how thin can you spread some of these funds and do something. At the same time, starve one project and put it off 3 or 4 or 5 years. And, you know, when you talk to the project managers, we go to these site visits, I find them incredibly helpful. But, you know, what are the project managers talking to us about? They're saying, well, I'm going to try to fix the 100-year-old section of this building because the 50-year-old part is still holding on. So we won't worry about that one right now. And it's kind of like, you know, I think that in the public mind, I don't think people recognize how expensive it is to get anything through a public process. It isn't like when you, well, it isn't even easy when you build on your own home in the city of Oakland. It's certainly not going to be busy when you have to go through the state of California. So we're concerned about safety and the balances of all those things. So I really think there is some, I think, moral imperative, I think, to encourage all of us to try to say something at this opportune time. That would be the end of my comments on that.
Beforehand, we do have public comment, Chair. Asado Olabala.
So you brought up the feasibility study, but you didn't mention how much they approved it. $700,000 from Measure Y for a feasibility study that's supposedly going to be done in less than a year. This is not a priority, but this is part of the problem of how we operate. People have things that's important to them. They want that property to be used for a residential structure eventually. But this is not the time for that. But this is how this board operates. There are board members that want that property to be used for residential purposes. So a feasibility study, and they added in some other properties, but that's the property they really want to be built. We don't have the money. So $700,000 from Measure Y, when you cannot remediate the contaminated soil at McClymonds because you're not willing to spend the money, you won't prioritize that. There's a problem. I just called a school board member to say, did you know about what's being talked about related to the bonds and the negative rating and the fact that we might be looking at considering closing schools? They had no idea. Now, some board members might know about it, but this board member doesn't. I said, they're in there discussing it, and you guys don't have the ability to have the information. And the last thing I want to say is about Bunch. This facilities department recommended that Bunch students be removed from the building in order to fix the structural problems. with the intent of those students coming back. And I told you before, they did absolutely nothing. And they allowed that property to deteriorate into what it is, to be demolished. Those students are still over there at that middle school, MLK. It's absolutely, it's unreal that they did this.
Chair, that concludes public speakers for this item.
Thank you. If we could go to the next item then. H1, 252961, on the funds 25 and 35. Were there particular questions before he discusses that from the committee members, so that he has some framework for responding?
Yeah, if Michael's on, I can,
Okay. From the committee?
Yes.
Are there specific questions around the fund 30? Okay.
No, good evening. Michael is there. I oversee the accounting functions of the PAN program. There is just a request by the board for, especially the newer members, to know what Fund 25 is all about, and then what Fund 25 and Fund 35 is all about, and what they could be used for. So Fund 25 is used primarily to account for monies received from fees levied on development projects as a condition of approval. So when you go to the city of Oakland to apply for a permit to remodel your kitchen, or to add an extra bedroom, or to construct a new building in town, you pay a permit fee. So the district gets part of those permit fees. And those fees we put in Fund 25. There's several criteria that governs its use, but I'm not going to go into more detail here. The primary thing to note is that the funds should be used to impact students directly. For example, we cannot pay any salaries from Fund 25, no administrative expenditures in Fund 25. We cannot pay for the cost of master plan in Fund 25. So it has to be used in a way that directly impacts students. That's really the key word there. As a summary, then Fund 35, like was mentioned earlier, this is the county school facilities fund. When we complete a project and we file for reimbursement from the state, as was mentioned earlier, this comes in like 3 years, anywhere from 3 to 5 years down the line. So when we get those funds get plowed back in Fund 25, Fund 35. The state established a fund that received those monies coming back from completed projects. And for the most part, these funds are treated just like our own capital Fund 21. So they could be used for site improvements, building renovations, furniture, fixtures, anything that, for the most part, anything we can use Fund 25, Fund 21 for, we can use Fund 35 for. So in our spending plan, you see us mostly subsidizing Fund 21 with funds in Fund 25 and Fund 35. Fund 35 is more general in nature, just like Fund 21. But the difference between Fund 35 and 25 is the fact that 25 has to directly impact the students in the classroom. It's just a brief summation. Are there any questions?
Can I maybe add one piece to just connect it to the previous item that we talked about?
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, Michael, thank you for sharing that. If you look back at, and there was a question that was asked, like, who approves or who recommends or who makes the decision? We make a recommendation to the board, you all review it, and then it goes to the full board. And I'll just give you a couple of examples of that. We have developer fees, which is Fund 25, right? That is a very, very tightly regulated use around it because it has to be around growth, right? And there's a few things that you can do with developer fees. One, if you have an expansion of a school in a neighborhood in which you are having growth, projected growth based on what the city development plan is happening, you can apply those developer fees in that area. We applied it. If you go to the CCPA project, CCPA met those criteria. So rather than taking from the bond program, we invested $13 million to expand the size of the CCPA project because we were talking about it earlier. All of the escalation that's coming in because of inflation, we do have to address that, right, based on the scope of the projects. So developer fees, because CCPA is located in the neighborhood where it's located, right, and it was an expansion, qualified for the use of developer fees. So in that case, we recommended as staff to bring that forward to cover the expenses so it didn't have to come out of the bond program, right, but it came out of the developer fees. We shared that with you all. I believe you made a recommendation to move forward with the spending plan because there were increases for all of the projects, and the board approved it. So that was how it worked with Fund 25. The same thing is true for Fund 35. When the state, like I had mentioned earlier that we have submitted for the Glenview project, when that money becomes available, it comes into Fund 35, and then we have conversations internally, and this is where your master plan is so critical. What are the priorities that you want to spend that money on, right? And you can utilize it once that money comes in. And so the Fund 35 is because really what the state is doing, and this might be not exactly clear, the state is reimbursing you for funds that you have already spent, right? So the Glenview project is complete, done, students are in that school, and the state is finally coming around to reimburse you for that expense. So it essentially is replacing previous bond funds that were utilized, and then the district puts that into into Fund 35, and then you use your master plan and where the current priorities are in that day to expend it. And Michael is very good at knowing all the allowable expenses, and that is where we have a conversation about what are things that we can bring forward to the board as a recommendation. So those are the two additional funds to Fund 21, and we do report out on that, and you get the expenditure plans for it.
Have enough staffing to keep up? Because there seems to be a lag in the submittal, or is it that the projects are in queue?
In all fairness, around where the facility, many of you have been oversight over kind of the facilities department, from about 2015 to a few years ago, there was tremendous turnover in the department over time. And these are the types of things when you don't have continuity around those areas where you have things that don't actually get followed up on. And the OPSC funding is a good example. And in the way that we've restructured the department now to have a planning side, always looking forward, always looking for those things and doing that work, and a construction side, so that you have both halves of the equation. Because honestly, your bond program, and I should probably say this 8 times, the most valuable thing that you can do is invest in the planning side, because if you nail the planning right, you can efficiently implement projects. When you have not planned projects well, you pay for that in change orders, and you pay for that in different ways along that continuum that we've talked about, right? So, it is a really important, there's 2 halves to, facilities planning and construction and management. And so I would say that during that turnover, there were a lot of gaps that happened, and the good thing about it is that we're able to still submit some of those and get at least in line when there's funding available at the state to reimburse Fund 35.
Are there any other questions? Yes?
Well, I just want to comment and ask, it's a comment and ask, Fund 35 is basically, you're getting reimbursed, say you got reimbursed $10 million from Glenview, so that you can take $5 million of that and put it on Garfield project, and you could take $5 million and put it on McClymonds. But you can't buy $5 million worth of furniture for the whole district for schools and disperse it out. That's not what that money's for. It's for like projects, so it still stays in the bond program, and it's not just a free-for-all, as I call it, in buying furniture or computers or anything like that. That's not what that Fund 35 is. It stays with the bond, and it stays with bond projects. So,
And I would just add that, like, you know, those of us sitting here having this conversation right now, for the projects that are in play that are going to OPSC to get the reimbursement, we may not actually see that money come in, but we're setting up the bond program for long-term health, right? Because the work that we're doing is generational work, right? Like, we're setting the schools for the next 20 years. That's what your master plan really is. It's doing an assessment of the current condition of your facilities so that you can use that assessment to make decisions moving forward. And this is the financial strategies behind it. And I would just say that one of the things, and happy to come in and talk about, we have actually leveraged lots of other funding sources that haven't historically been utilized to support the overall bond program, partnering with Eat, Learn, Play and foundations and philanthropy to support playgrounds that when got started in this work, there wasn't any real money in the bond to support playground replacements. And so there is, and this is where kind of having a robust team that has continuity and can like build grants, the CAL FIRE grant that just completed the work at MLK and Manzanita was a grant that we applied for 2 years ago, right? To install trees and create more urban forests within the city. And so, within the state of California, but Oakland was really advantaged, and we got 2 of those implementation grants. So, we're constantly looking to complement the bond program. And so Fund 35 is probably the most systematized way that you can do that. And we'll be looking for that in Proposition 2 with other opportunities that become available in the near future.
Thank you. Yes.
So, yeah, one quick question. So I do understand the restrictions around the uses of the funds that eventually come in for Fund 35 and Fund 25. But where or how, if those restrictions were going to be changed, or if the uses or the allowable uses were going to be changed, what would be the process for that?
No, it's a great question. I think that, in terms of, if we just stick with the Glenview, like, I don't know what the conditions are going to be on the ground when that district receives that money in 7 years, right? So staff first goes to the master plan to assess, like, what are the things that we need additional funding for? Right now, I can tell you that if that money was, coming in immediately, what we're seeing in the facilities master plan, and you'll see this at the next meeting, is really around the heat conditions within our classrooms across the district, right? And so you might be able to leverage that funding to address that immediate concern because it's something that is a priority in your master plan. So I can't tell you immediately what it would be, but it's staff working in conjunction with both the facilities committee, CBOC, to really identify what the master plan is. And that's why we want to do a master plan, so that people understand what are our priorities. And I think we've actually been really successful in this round of the bond to address some of the priorities that were specifically called out in the last master plan and voted on by voters in Measure Y. One of the things that you'll see is that safety as an overall concern is still there, but it's nowhere near in the priority because we've done door entry systems and we've reinforced camera systems and things of that nature. So, like, there is sustained effort around those items. So that would be the process that would happen. Now, when we get the OPSC funding, I don't know. And so it's the conditions on the ground at the time that would.
So I think my question is more maybe geared towards Fund 25. So when we say, oh, hey, the developer fees for expansion and such, I understand that those rules exist now, and at some point they were drafted to say, oh, these are the restricted uses. If the city or the school board says, oh no, we've got some emergency, could they, or what would be the process for changing that? I just want to make sure
I got you.
It happens the way it should happen, if that is the will. And that it just can't be just, oh yeah, hey, we're gonna change the rules.
I thank you for clarifying the question. That is actually set up at the state level around state law. So the board and the city would not necessarily have jurisdiction around how the developer fees are used, but the city can influence and the district, actually, we just put in a recommendation, we had a public hearing to raise our developer fees to the maximum level that get collected at the city and the county level. So the usage of those are codified in state law, and so we wouldn't be able to adjust those for the scenarios that you were talking about. What is important is to have tight understanding of where the city's plan is going around development, so you can know where to leverage those. And there's a few things, like if you had, you could do portable replacements that are there. You can add them on to projects like we did with CCPA and MLA to account for some of the escalation. So, but to your question, it's very tightly controlled by state legislation, and you would have to change legislation at that level.
Thank you.
If, I think we should move on. The evening is getting on. Is there any further comments?
Yes, Chair. Asada Olakpala.
All right, ma'am.
Kind of tune y'all out because you allowing someone to speak to you and you're accepting the information. A lot of it is lies. So you have information that's saying that access to the bonds 21 and 22. The question is, how are they using bonds, whether it be Measure B, Y, J, Fund 21, Fund 22, in a fair and equitable manner? And that's never being demonstrated. They are prioritization process is favoritism. Certain projects are put on the front, like Fremont, Coliseum College Prep. It's already been said that we have too many schools, but we adding classrooms to the already remodeling of college, extra classrooms. At Fremont, we are adding more classrooms. We don't need more classrooms at Coliseum College Prep or Fremont. So we are doing things in a way that is mismanagement. And somebody needs to start identifying that this mismanagement is going on. And stop allowing people to come here and give you information and you don't check it out. Okay? And lastly, this thing about developmental fees and stuff like that, they're having a hard time collecting those fees in the city of Oakland. And you're going to go through the same thing. But they give you what they want you to know. And if you don't reach out and ask for more than what they're asking, you're going to be in the trick bag that most of us in this city are in. Not just OUSD, but the city of Oakland does this too. Staff is not being held accountable. They tell you anything they want to tell you.
That concludes public speakers on this item, Chair.
Thank you. Our last item, H2, 252967. This is on the facility site visits. Are there any comments from any of those who attended? Or next, you go first.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. So West Oakland Middle, we had the opportunity to go through West Oakland Middle and actually walk through Bunch. And that's a very nice campus. It's very pleasing. The courtyard that's shared now for a shared space for the students, all the students in the school, is really quite nice. And the classrooms, we went into the classrooms and they're clean and in very good condition. It's actually a quite nice place, and I do think they share some services because the man that led us through Bunch, he's a coach, and he's a coach for the Bunch kids and a coach for the West Oakland Middle School kids. So they share a coach, and they all seem to know him when he was all walking up and down. And so that was a nice visit. Cole, I mean, it's a beautiful building. It's set up to be occupied. There were not a lot of occupants there in the open office space area. But at the next meeting, I would like to know where we are in the permitting process to permit the whole building and what exactly the building was permitted for, particularly the lower level. I want to understand what it would take to permit it to have whatever you wanted in there, because it seems to me it's only permitted for storage right now. But I know how to read the DSA website, and I can't find that information. So please bring it to us next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to add, so when we were over at West Oakland Middle School, they showed us the sort of results of the window replacement, and aesthetically, it looked wonderful. Looked like a sort of a place where you would enjoy the kind of built environment around you, and I'm glad that the students there are enjoying that. Also, we were able to go into one of the classrooms and sort of feel what the windows look like, or feel what they feel like, and kind of understand some of the energy efficiency dynamics around there as well. And yeah, I'll also kind of echo it's now Secretary Dawson's sentiment that when we went over to what was then Cole on its last day as Cole, and apparently, and now, when we were there, and I understand it was a Friday, but there were just so many empty workstations and desks, and yeah, I just assumed that having a pretty brand new facility that there would be more people there utilizing it.
Thank you. I agree with all the comments. I thought that the window replacement project looked great. That whole space in the middle that has been redone, grass and the sitting areas, really nicely done, nicely landscaped. And the staff, I have to say, on our site visits, the staff is very generous, and they answer all our questions, and so it's appreciated. And it is a disappointment to kind of go to the Foster Leadership Center, because it's kind of like, it could have been just because it's Fridays, and Fridays, people like to work from home. I don't know. But for the investment that we've made in that building, it looks pretty empty. And, and one side of it looked pretty, it was sort of filled on one portion, and the other one looked pretty empty. I mean, there's no way. I mean, there's a lot of people not there. So I guess it concerns us, certainly, as a group, the few of us that were able to go, because it's kind of like people, when they ask us, was this investment worthwhile? And what else are we doing? So I think the questions that Andrea asks would be really appreciated, so we have better perspective on what we're going forward. And I think that was really it. I don't know if there's any.
Yes, we have Sada Olagbala.
So, according to your schedule, you're supposed to be visiting McClymonds in April. And my question to you is why? Why are you going to McClymonds? There's absolutely nothing going on at that school related to the modernization project. Even though you've moved all of the children to half of the building, and we don't have access to certain parts of the building. We don't have an intercom system in the new office. We don't have ADA ramp accessibility. We don't have the water machines that we're supposed to have. They don't work, most of them. Why are you going in April? You need to make a decision right now. We're going to McClymonds if something's going on at that school. You need to be asking him when they're going to start the remodeling project that was supposed to start in July. This project started 2021. We're in 2025 and the design phase. Something is wrong. And you will not challenge anybody to ask a question, what is wrong? Why? You do not have a reason to go to McClymonds in April if there is nothing going on in the building. You can at least ask this man, when will they start the project? He's going to give you some lip service with no answers to that question, but it's a simple question.
That concludes public speakers for this item, Chair. No, that's Asada Olababa.
This facilities department refused to replace the broken down scoreboard. McClymonds is going for the state championship next week. The scoreboard has never worked effectively. Last Saturday, they rented a scoreboard because they know our scoreboard doesn't work. I don't know how much it costs to rent. It is absolutely ridiculous that you know that the scoreboard doesn't work. Now we're getting ready to start basketball season. And we have bleachers that are this far apart from the floor of the basketball court. You stretch your feet out at the bottom of and you're on the court. They were supposed to fix that. They didn't do it. They have done nothing. Scoreboard doesn't work. The intercom system doesn't work. We had to play a lot of our games away because our field is not sound. This department is sabotaging McClymonds. And if you're not going to do it right, close this damn school. I'm tired of coming here. Today's my sister's birthday. I had to leave the birthday celebration to come here to deal with McClymonds. And it's not all your fault because the people from McClymonds should be here demanding it. That's the major problem. They're not making the demand.
Thank you, ma'am.
That concludes public speakers for non-agenda items.
I believe we are adjourning. Thank you very much.
If I may, Chair, we do have an introduction to new legislative matters.
Oh, do we have any?
If none from the committee, we have Asada Olababa.
Ah, okay. Excuse me.
Yeah, we've mentioned several throughout the evening.
All right.
One is, well, for me, it was a report on the feasibility analysis. Report on the feasibility analysis. It's a report on the relation, I guess it's a report on 1025, particularly the relationship between, its existence on this historic register and CEQA. And then I think Andrea had a couple too.
The coal, report on coal. I'd also like a report on filling CBOC positions. We're light 3 positions here. So we will continue to also request of board members. But that's the 2 that I have. And the way we've worked it in the past is that we can also send items to Viola and she can reach out to staff now since she's chairperson, you chair and vice chair, and make sure that they get on the next agenda.
All right. Anybody else? All right. We have
Isn't it amazing nobody asked for a report on McClymonds? I wonder why. Nobody asked for a report on what's going on at McClymonds. Isn't that something? I'll be back. I'll be back and ask the same questions. You need to have a report on what's going on at McClymonds High School, why they have not started the remodeling of the school, why they have not done nothing for the remediation of the he talked about contaminated soil issues are dealt with. No, they're not at McClymonds. You need to do it. You know, if you don't do it, this could be considered discrimination, and it could be considered racism. If this was something having to do with newcomers, y'all would be jumping through the roof to say we need to help. A sanctuary. This is a sanctuary city, but you do nothing to help African American students when issues are brought up. But I'll be back and I'll put it in front of you, and you'll sit here and do nothing. That's racism.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Last minute comments?
Yes, Chair.
All right, at, let's see, 8:37, we are adjourned. Thank you so much, and I appreciate staff's time. Thank you.